In the deep sands of time, the fascinating world of ancient Egypt is brewing with potential. Let's embark on a journey to a remarkable era, where colossal pyramids reached for the heavens, hieroglyphs etched stories in stone, and the stark division between rich and poor defined lives along the banks of the Nile. Join us as we uncover the mysteries of this ancient land, where grandeur and struggle coexisted beneath the scorching sun. It's a time where agriculture began to advance faster than previously thought possible, causing a massive boom within the agriculture businesses. Instead of seeing floods as a natural disaster, the Egyptians harnessed them to deposit nutrient-rich silt onto the fields, turning the floodplain into incredibly fertile land. They developed an intricate system of canals and dikes to control the water flow and ensure a consistent water supply for their crops, also called irrigation. Ancient Egypt was a time of great agricultural advancements. They diversified crops which not only helped provide sustenance but also mitigated the risk of crop failures due to pests or weather conditions. Egyptians were no stranger to domestication of animals. Cattle, sheep, and goats were used for their meat, milk, and even labor, adding more variety to the Egyptian diet. As they advanced with great strides in this industry, they had to come up with more efficient ways to harvest these larger areas. So they had to invent tools to go along with it, such as plows and sickles. To safeguard against food shortages, Egyptians started building granaries to store surplus crops during bountiful years. This strategic storage allowed them to endure periods of drought or poor harvest. They knew futures could be uncertain and made sure that no matter what happened, they would have what they needed. The gap between rich and poor was large, but quite different from today. At the top of the social hierarchy were the pharaohs, considered a divine ruler and the wealthiest individual in ancient Egypt. They owned vast lands and resources, including the Nile floodplains. They lived in luxurious palaces overlooking the tranquil waters of the Nile. Their homes were architectural marvels, boasting intricate carvings and magnificent gardens that showcased the kingdom's wealth and power. Below them we would find nobility and officials. These were appointed by the pharaoh and therefore enjoyed considerable wealth and privileges. They oversaw administrative functions, collected taxes, and managed land. After which came the priests. They held significant power and wealth, especially in temple complexes with vast land holdings and offerings. High-ranking priests had access to temple resources and were quite influential in Egyptian society. Among the middle class, we would find skilled artisans and craftsmen, such as jewelers, sculptors, weavers, and potters. They earned a decent income from their crafts and produced luxury items for both the elite and the general population. Alongside them, we would find those who facilitated commerce and trade in ancient Egypt, the merchants and traders. They could accumulate great wealth, but their status in society varied heavily depending on their success. Not everyone lived a life of luxury, however. At the near bottom of the social hierarchy, we find farmers and laborers. They were the majority of the population, working in farms or construction projects, earning modest incomes and living simple lives. But below them were those who had nothing, the servants and slaves. They unfortunately had limited rights and lived in challenging conditions. They often had no say in their own lives and simply had to do as told. There weren't many options to move classes during this time. Very few success stories were written as most professions were passed down through generations, and the upper class was carefully selected. It was, however, not uncommon to see entrepreneurs accumulate wealth through trade, land ownership, or owning successful businesses. Others would marry into a more wealthy family or receive education to land in roles that would bring them more success. So while the social hierarchy in ancient Egypt was rather rigid, there were opportunities for social mobility, although limited, not impossible. As for working conditions, there are vast differences between the classes. Pharaohs were primarily focused on governance and ceremonial duties, but didn't need to adhere to a strict schedule. The high-ranking officials and nobles often had busy schedules, however, often working during daylight hours. And priests were scheduled around temple rituals and ceremonies. Nothing unexpected, really. The middle class generally had flexible working hours as they worked when they had clients, but they would likely be active from sunrise to sunset as they didn't want to miss out on potential clients. The poor had it the worst. They worked long hours, often from sunrise to sunset or even longer. Farmers would have a lower workload during flooding, but it increased as soon as there were crops to harvest. Laborers typically worked all the daylight time as they wouldn't have enough visibility to work during the night. but slaves and servants would work as long as their masters needed them to. There could be times they wouldn't get much sleep at all, but it largely depended on the demands of the household they served. In general, working hours in ancient Egypt varied for most people. Due to extreme heat and flooding, it wasn't always possible to have a consistent work schedule. The Egyptians would also incorporate religious festivals and holidays, providing some well-needed rest from their work. You might be wondering about the role of women in the workforce, and I have to say, it's quite similar to today. While their role depended largely on their class, women could be found in all areas of work, from farming and entertainment to craftsmanship and religious roles. There were many priestesses and scribes, so they were educated and a vital part of the Egyptian kingdom. Some were even political advisors, regents, and even pharaohs. It wasn't at all uncommon for women to take up roles alongside their husbands in craftsmanship either. Children were also expected to participate, but unlike other eras of our history, they were mostly educated and were less likely to be exploited. They mainly participated in household chores or taking care of livestock and agriculture work. As they grew older, their roles changed, and depending on their gender, they were assigned different areas of work. While children were very much expected to participate, it was not necessarily the same as a full-time, exploitative child labor as we see in some modern contexts. Now let's talk salaries. While ancient Egyptians had a currency called deben, they generally used barter and goods exchange as payments. A farmer would simply be allowed to take a portion of the crops they grew and harvested, and could trade those with others as a form of currency. The elite would receive tributes, taxes, or offerings from the population, but this will only help aid the downfall of these ancient Egyptians. Over time, the Egyptian kingdom began to lose its strength due to a number of factors. Weak rulers, political fragmentation, and challenges to the traditional power structure helped the strength of their central government erode, combined with numerous invasions and conquests by various foreign powers that resulted in a loss of territory and changes in leadership and governance. The decline in agricultural productivity due to changes in the Nile's flooding patterns, environmental factors, and soil salinity contributed further to an already disaster-stricken kingdom. The high taxation and resource depletion ended up taking its toll on the economy, causing unrest among the people, and internal conflicts caused power struggles among regional rulers. The cost of maintaining a large army came with a considerable strain on state resources. All this continued to weaken a kingdom struggling with stability. Due to the high invasion count from foreign powers, the Egyptians became divided, not just in land and ideas but also in religion, as they saw a rise of foreign deities and changes in religious practices competing with their traditional beliefs. The eventual collapse was inevitable, and they eventually fell under the rule of the Persian Empire in the 6th century BC. While ancient Egyptians didn't remain in control, there is a lot to learn here. History has taught us that nobody rules forever. They did a great job surviving for centuries, using innovative strategies and wealth-building techniques, unlike many others during their time. We still apply their agricultural lessons today, and that's not the only thing we can learn from them. From the rise of the Egyptian kingdom, we can learn that adapting to situations can bring great financial benefits. Where others would have seen floodings as a disaster, we saw the Egyptians develop vast agricultural plains for their crops and innovative tools to harvest them, heavily increasing the efficiency of their labor. Their use of social safety nets such as granaries allows us to see that they knew the future could be unpredictable and that they needed to hedge their bets in case of disaster. Their mind was on providing for a vulnerable population in times of crisis, similar to how we would use an emergency fund and savings for unexpected events, whether it happens to ourselves or our family. They were long-term planners, seeing not only today's gains but looking to the future as a long-term investment opportunity, akin to how we should be seeing our investment strategies. Their economic stability came from mitigating risk. By connecting the Nile's flooding patterns and agricultural productivity, we can underscore the importance of understanding cause and effect when investing, and further clarifying why we should know what we're investing into before we take the plunge. While I didn't cover it before, the ancient Egyptians kept meticulous financial records for transparency and accountability in managing finances. From this, we learn that tracking our income and expenses allows us to see where our money comes from and where it's going. And this gives us a better understanding about what our situation is like. Looking back, I would say ancient Egypt is comparable to our lives today in more ways than one. While the advancements are on a different scale and we've come a very long way since, I can't help but feel a sense of resemblance to today's society. Let me know if you felt the same. Thank you for watching. Before you leave, check out Cash Crusade, a mobile game I developed about financial education that will release this Wednesday. Links in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating journeys through history. Until our paths cross again, may we journey forward, as the sands of time have witnessed, toward a future steeped in wisdom and prosperity, just as the Nile's life-giving waters sustained our ancient land.